Hello. On this episode of Dungeon and Die Rolls, I'm going to be going through the 10 games that I'm most interested in looking at this year's Gen Con. So I've been going to Gen Con for something like 10 years now, and every year I end up bringing home a pile of new games that have enthralled me in the dealer's hall. And especially when I first started, I ended up having some frequent degree of buyer's remorse. I'd get something after trying a demo of it, and then I would find out that the rules really weren't that good, or it didn't, a full play as opposed to the small demo didn't hold up to it. And so after the first couple of years, I've started really trying to do some more research ahead of time and get an idea of what games I'm most interested in when I get to the con. And this isn't always possible because a lot of the things there are brand new releases or brand new demos that you just don't have any information on. But I use the Gen Con preview on Board Game Geek, and it's a wonderful resource, and it helps me to at least have a list and a plan of what things I know I want to look at and sit down and really try the demos and evaluate them and read through the rule books while I'm there at the booth so that I make a better informed choice. I'm not going to try to order this list in preference. It was hard enough taking the huge document I have of stuff that I want to look at and finding the top 10 that I'm most interested in. I can't order it from 1 to 10 within that. So I'm just going to go through in alphabetical order, and these are the games that I'm most interested in. Some of them are for purchase, so I may end up grabbing them after I try them. Some of them are listed as being there only for demos, but at least I'll have an idea as to whether or not I want to earmark that game for future information. So the first game is one that's gotten a fair amount of buzz. I haven't read much of it, but I see it's on the boards on Board Game Geek. It's making some rounds, and that's Holding On: The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr. You're playing cooperatively as hospice nurses, and you're trying to get to know and care for a new terminal patient, Billy Kerr. And you're playing through a series of scenarios, and the point is to try to become his friend and get him to confide in you so that you can get to know his past. And the ultimate goal is to help him confront his 3 greatest life regrets. And I suppose that you'll win if he confronts them and is able to accept and deal with them and die peacefully. I'm not sure how much of a board game this is going to be, as opposed to a storytelling game or going through a book to get story pieces. We'll see. I'll try the demo and see what it's like. But if nothing else, it's a unique premise, which is always interesting to me when I'm looking at games. The next one is the Kids on Bikes role-playing game. I really like the premise of this game, which is to emulate the movies and TV shows that are about kids who are banding together to try to confront some problem that either adults can't handle or for some reason are unable to see or acknowledge, and I've enjoyed a lot of those. So it's trying to emulate things like E.T., Casper the Ghost, The Goonies, Stranger Things. These are It. I'm a big fan of It, and it definitely falls in that category. One of the things that I find particularly interesting about the system is you can create a powered NPC, so it's a character that has supernatural powers of some sort, that tags along with the party and helps them and is controlled jointly by the players. And this is representing E.T. and E.T., Casper the Ghost, Eleven in Stranger Things. And so I'd be interested to see how that's handled mechanically and whether the system lends itself well enough to playing some one-shot adventures, and I may pick it up. Then we have the Legendary Encounters X-Files. The Legendary series is a long-standing fan. Really, I'm a long-standing fan of it. There are a couple of games in it that I didn't care for. I refused to touch the Big Trouble in Little China, and I thought that Firefly so sadly flopped. But overall, the games are solid. They have interesting cooperative synergies, and they're pretty easy to teach as deck builder games, and especially with the Encounter series, they have a lot of theme. And since I love the Legendary Encounters games, and I watched the heck out of X-Files when I was a kid, this is just going to be a pickup for me. I'm just going to grab this game like I have gotten a Legendary game every year since I started going to Gen Con, I think. I think the second year I went was when Alien came out. So yeah, there we go. Then we have Legends of Sleepy Hollow. I enjoy horror stories, and I enjoy taking mythology or stories and reinterpreting them. And so this does both. You're playing cooperatively through a campaign story, and you're villagers of Sleepy Hollow who are investigating the disappearance of Ichabod Crane. And you're encountering and dealing with various supernatural creatures that are around Sleepy Hollow while you do that. I think that's a cool premise, and I think the concept that they've described is interesting, wherein all of the characters have special abilities, but the way that you can use and activate them gets in some way more complicated or complex as you continue playing the game and your characters accrue fear from dealing with the monsters that they encounter. So I'm going to be interested in seeing how that plays and whether it stands up to what my brain has. Another one that's got some cool mythology interpretation is Mornquest. This is apparently based on a novel, a series of novels that I haven't heard of, haven't read. But I saw this on the list, and I thought that the idea of playing cooperatively against these Irish mythological creatures was cool, because Irish myth is cool and has a lot of very seminal monsters in it, as well as some very interesting monsters in it that are a little less well known. The only problem is figuring out how to pronounce them. If you look at the actual spelling of Banshee or Ketchi, or you're sunk. I did a very quick look at the Board Game Geek entry for the game, and they have a gallery up, and the board and the components and the art on it just looks gorgeous. So I'm very intrigued to try this out. I forget now whether it's available or only for demo. I think it's available, so we'll see if I end up bringing that one home. Then there's Nyctophobia. Again, the games that have some kind of unique mechanism. I dig. So in Nyctophobia, it's a cooperative versus one game where the large group of players are humans who are trying to escape the other player who's some kind of killer. And I believe that it can be either a traditional slasher murderer or a mage trying to perform a ritual. But the idea is that you're trying to escape from this killer by running through a pitch black forest, trying to find a car, I think. And the thing that makes it sound particularly interesting to me is the game is actually played with blackout glasses on, so that you can't see anything that you're doing. You're literally feeling over the board to try to determine what you should do. I don't know what your turns are like, what the actions that you do are. But I thought that was a really neat concept, and I'll definitely be checking out Nyctophobia. The next one I want to look at is Rise of Tribes. This is a competitive game, and it was a Kickstarter, so some people already have it from their Kickstarter deliveries, but I believe it's not been generally available to the public until Gen Con. It sounds like it's a shorter strategy game that's based on cavemen, tribes of cavemen competing for space and hunting and things like that. And it's supposed to have some innovative dice mechanisms where you're taking actions that are powerful to different degrees based on how you rolled on your dice, and then also influenced by the dice that were previously used on that action, I think. Something like that. Interesting dice, and it's supposed to have very good component art and meeples and nice components, which is also a draw for me. And it's a short playing strategy game, so all of these things are pluses for me. I'm going to check out Rise of Tribes. The next one on my list is Rising 5 Runes of Asteros. And it's another cooperative game. And this one is a cooperative deduction puzzle solving game. You use a companion app, and the app at the beginning of each game is going to randomly generate a code consisting of different runes. I think they're different colored runes. And the players have to interact with the board, and they explore the board, fight monsters, and they do things that are trying to get clues from the app as to what the code is. And your goal is to try to figure out the correct code to input into the app and save the world before the evil Devil King something destroys it, something like that. I'll see how it plays, but that's a very interesting idea to me. I enjoyed Alchemists, which has a similar thing going on where the specific combination of pieces and what the ingredients make is randomly determined by the app each time you play. So I think that's a really good way to give a board game some additional replay value. The next game is the one that I know the least about, which means I'm probably not going to end up liking whatever it is that I see. But it's on my list of things to check out. Just because there's inherent promise in what I see and what I read. And that's Sovereign Skies. It's a sci-fi game. The box art looks really nice, which doesn't always line up with what's inside, but at least it has some promise if they used the same artist or they spent the same amount of money that the components inside will have nice artwork. And it's a sci-fi game where you're trying to build up your federation or your faction, and you're moving across the board trying to occupy colonies, recruit politicians, and it's described as an epic Rondelle strategy game. The word epic is a little bit of a put-off to me, especially since the game is listed as playing in 30 to 60 minutes. Maybe it's just a descriptor that they're using that they think means fun or cool, and they're using it in a slang way. I don't see how a game at 60 minutes is really epic. But I have played a couple of Rondelle games that I enjoyed, and I thought it was an interesting tool to use, particularly Perdition's Mouth. That had some cool stuff going on. So I'll check it out. I'll see if it has promise or if it's just as empty as its current description. And the last game in my top 10 block is the role-playing game We Used to Be Friends. Obviously, a not very subtle reference to Veronica Mars, which was I was quite a fan of the show, especially the first season. And you're playing as a group of teenage detectives trying to solve crimes in your city. And I am particularly interested in the fact that it's a collaborative game, so there's no DM necessary, which means I get to play the same way as the rest of the group, since I'm always the appointed DM. So everyone's playing collaboratively. There's supposed to be no prep necessary because you are collaboratively. I'm not sure if you're creating the clues or if you draw them from source material, but you're collaboratively finding and interpreting the clues for the mystery that's going on in the town. And I'm gonna check it out because I like the source material that it's going after. I like having some more collaborative games. We'll see how that goes. So those are the games that I'm most interested in. They are not by a long stretch the only games that I'm going to be looking at. I have a very large list that I took those from. So if any of those sound interesting, or if you want to find out what other games I came across that weren't on this list but I thought were awesome anyway, please like the video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll be doing post-Gen Con videos when I get back with all of my new purchases.